Good morning, Year 8. How are you getting on with this? Do drop me an email if you're struggling, or just to send me your work. It's always good to see what you've been up to. Okay, so we're going to look at finding the gradient. We've talked about the gradient before, and we've talked about how the gradient is the steepness of the line, and we've also talked about how it relates to the equation of the line. So today, our starter, we're going to be writing, just practicing what we're doing before, writing the function or the equation for a graph, if we know the gradient and the intercept. But the main part of the lesson, we're going to be finding the gradient of a line from 2 points. So let's have a look at the starter. So last lesson, we learnt about how the intercept relates to the equation, and the lesson before we learned how the gradient relates to the equation, and these are coming up in your 10 questions as well, so you're getting a little bit of practice in 10 questions as well, 20 questions. So let's look at the first one. First equation has got a gradient of 4 and the intercept's of -3, so the equation would be y equals 4x, because the number in front of the x, multiplying the x, is the gradient, -3, because that's the intercept. Okay, so going backwards from this one, can you work out what the gradient would be to go here and what the intercept would be here? And then for these ones, can you work out what the equation would be here and here? And for these two, you just have to be really careful. I should do a little star next to these two because they're difficult. Think about what the gradient of this one is, what the intercept is, what the gradient of this one is, what the intercept is. So just pause your screen, pause the video, have a go at those. You might need to copy that table into your book and then come back and I will show you the answers. Okay, so we should have some answers now. So if we look at this first one, it's the number multiplying the x that is the gradient. So the gradient for this one is 5. And it's the number that we add on at the end, that's the intercept. So that's where the line crosses the y-axis, it crosses at 4. So on here we've got 6 as the gradient, so it's y equals 6x, and 3 is the intercept, so it's y equals 6x plus 3. This one, the gradient is a half, so we've got y equals a half x, and the intercept is -2, so we put -2 or subtract 2 at the end. And here we've got a negative gradient, so we can write that as y equals -2x plus 1. Sometimes, however, you'll see it written like this, y equals 1 minus 2x. So they've just swapped the, not very good colour, is it? Let's try again. Y equals 1 minus 2x. So what they've done is they've swapped the two terms in the expression here around. So they've put the -2x second and the 1 first. It doesn't matter, they're the same thing. Okay, so if we look at the last two then that I said were slightly trickier, that's what's happened here. But remember, the gradient is always the number multiplying the x, so in this case it's -4, even though it's the second number, and the intercept is what you would add to that, which would be 3 in this case. Okay, and again here the gradient is -1/2 and the intercept is 5. So if you've got all of the top ones done, well done. If you've got the bottom ones done and correct, that's brilliant, so well done. Okay, let's move on to the main part of the lesson. Okay, so we've talked already that the gradient is the measure of steepness. Okay, so the higher the gradient, the steeper the line will be. And we measure it as the number of squares up that you travel for every 1 square across. Let me correct that there. For every 1 square across. So if you don't understand that just yet, don't worry. I'm going to go through the method first and then I will come back to that sentence, okay, and explain what that means. So let's just go through the method to start with. So the method is, before we start actually, you will need to print off the worksheet from Show My Homework because it's got this example and the next 2 examples on, so you can follow, you can copy my example as we go through. So, first of all, I want to choose 2 points on the line. So there can't be any points, they need to be points that go through an intersection of the line. So here, I've got a point here that's going through the point 1, 8. So I'm going to choose this point here. Let me choose a different colour here. I'm going to choose 1, 8 as 1 point. I don't want to choose this one here because it's not going through an intersection. I need it to go through an intersection, so where the 2 grid lines cross. So that's 1 point, and I think the other point I might choose is this one here, so -2, 2. So there's my 2 points. Then it says draw a triangle connecting the points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a straight line in here and a straight line in here so that I've got a triangle. Okay, does that make sense? So here are my 2 points, and I've done a vertical line straight down and a horizontal line to give me a right angled triangle. Now we need to find the length of the height, which is the red line in this case. So that goes from 8 down to 2, so that is 6. Okay, and find the width of the blue line. Okay, and that goes from -2 up to 1, which is 3. Oh, that's in the wrong place. Let's put that down there. So no, I'm not counting the squares. I'm actually using the numbers on the axis. So I said it's 2 up to 8, which is 6, and -2 to 1, which is 3. So you have to use the scales on the lines, which is not always how many squares there are. So how do I work out the gradient? Well, the gradient says you do the height, which is my red line, divided by the width, which is my blue line. So in this case, it's going to be 6 divided by 3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So the gradient of this line is 2. Okay. All right, so this gradient is 2. So when we come back, I want to come back to that sentence now. Let me just highlight the sentence. Okay, so it's the number of squares up you travel for every 1 square across. Okay, so let me get a decent pen. Should we go for blue? So if I start here, if I go 1 square across, okay, so I've gone 1 square across. How many squares up do I travel to get to the line? Well, I go 2 squares up. Okay, I'm just going to swap into a line. If I go 1 square across, I go 2 squares up. If I go 1 square across, I go 2 squares up, and so on. So 1 across, 2 up, 1 across, 2 up, 1 across, 2 up, and 1 across, 2 up. So we said the gradient was 2, and I'm going 2 squares up, or 2 units up, for every 1 square across, or 1 unit across. Okay? All right, so that's what the gradient of 2 means. So we've got 2 other examples to have a go at. Okay, they're on your sheet. So you've got example 2 on your sheet, you've got example 3 on your sheet. So it would be good now if you could pause and try this one yourself. You've got the instructions on your sheet. So don't forget, you start by choosing 2 points, but they have to be 2 points, okay, that are on intersections. Okay, so be really careful. So pause, have a go. Okay, welcome back. Let's see whether you, how you got on. Okay, it doesn't matter where your points are. So if you don't choose your points in the same place as me, that really doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to choose this one here. Okay, 2, 0. And I think I'm going to choose 5, 9 there. Okay, so I'm going to get my ruler. I'm going to draw in a line across where the red line came down. Let's do the red line down, and then I want a blue line Okay, so I've got my triangle drawn in here. So the height here, the red line, goes